We continue our conversation, the issue of gay marriage here in Central New York. Joining us to talk about this once again is Kim Dill. She's the Executive Director of SAGE Upstate New York. Robert Kraynak is a political science professor at Colgate University, and Vince Sgambati is on the board of Pride and Joy Families. And we welcome you to our exclusive web-only content of a conversation that we are talking about whether or not New York should legalize same-sex marriage in New York. And we're right in the middle of this, so Vince, you want to say?
Well, I mean, what I wanted to add, again, the argument about if we open up marriage, then incest, that argument has been used against gay people forever. I mean, no matter what we try to do, no matter how much we try to be part of responsible citizens in American culture, that argument is always thrown at us, that as soon as, you know, gay people, then it's bestiality, we're pedophiles, so there's nothing new in that, it's just rehashing it with marriage.
Right, but that doesn't mean there isn't a certain validity to that point, is that you understand the idea of moral relativism or cultural relativism. Or there was a song that was recently on American Idol, No Boundaries. Okay? And I think you're underestimating the degree to which your desire to be mainstream, which looks like actually being more conventional or more traditional, is actually introducing attitudes, and I've noticed this in many of the students that I teach. Their view of sex is, who cares? It's, you know, it's just a personal choice. It doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, that's nothing new, though.
No, I know.
That is not new.
It began in my generation in the 1960s. This is a development that has been going on for 40 years. Okay, and we are seeing some of the consequences of that. And I think you should be more concerned about those consequences as well.
I think the question is, do you believe that there's? I guess I have to ask you whether or not you believe that people are gay. I mean, that's a real...
I do.
Okay.
I certainly do. I mean, I don't know the causes of all of these things. You know, there are some people for whom it is not a choice, but there are obviously people who are bisexual, like the governor of New Jersey, who, you know, at some point, after being married for 30 years to a woman that he had sex with and raised children with, felt that that wasn't his authentic personality and something else was. So in that case, it looks more like a choice, or at least he was divided. He was uncertain as to what his identity was. But I don't know the explanation of all these things. And my answer is, you know, we should have a generous toleration of different lifestyles. But there are institutions.
Don't call it marriage.
Don't call it. And there are other institutions like the military, which you raised, and I think it's a very important thing, that are not simply understandable in terms of rights. Like the military, you give up certain rights, okay? And these are institutions which have to be maintained over a long period of time, which if everyone tries to reduce it to, I have my rights for this and I have my rights for that, you're going to undermine those institutions.
You object to this on the basis of, you said culture and biology, you're not buying the legal protection. What's the other issue?
Education. I'm concerned that this is going to lead to a propaganda effort of indoctrination in our schools in which young people...
And what will happen as a result?
As young people from a very early age are going to get all kinds of information about sexuality, which will not be age appropriate for them. And I'm also concerned...
Heather has two moms, Heather has two dads.
Yes, and even discussions of what the nature of various sexual practices are, which I think is not appropriate.
Okay.
And I think
really
it's going to lead to an indoctrination.
Well, you were a teacher.
In California, it has certainly been a big push for an indoctrination
campaign. I don't really understand
campaign.
how we get to that from people getting married. I mean, people get married all the time. If a teacher says that she's married, she's not going to be talking about sexual practices. It's a relationship. Right. I mean, it's not about, you can't really reduce it to that. And I don't think anybody's saying that sexual practices are going to be talked about in school. It just seems like it's not part of the issue at all.
I just disagree that it will not be talked about because it already is. I mean,
Well, what's the it? I'm not sure what you mean by it will not be talked about. I mean, if you have a mother and a father, or you have two fathers, or you have two moms, we all think about when is it that we need to talk to our children about sex? How do we protect them? How do we help them grow up to be healthy sexual beings, comfortable with sex, but also smart about the kinds? We all go through that as parents. I'm not sure that gay parents are running out there saying,
Look,
okay.
in California, there has been a very strong movement to rewrite textbooks, to rewrite sex education programs, to make mandatory the statement that all lifestyles are equally appropriate. And people who have spoken against it are considered now verging on hate speech.
But that's not talking
people
about
who want-
sexual practices.
People who want to defend their religious views have been persecuted. And more than that, as George admitted here, it's harder and harder to have an open debate about this because the stigma of actually being called homophobic or engaging in hate speech has become so strong that many people who are opposed to this don't want to discuss it.
Well,
and you can
the
confirm
point,
that.
well,
to me.
the point
There's a
that he's
huge
referring to is that there are a lot
intolerance
of
issue.
people that you're one of the few people willing to at least oppose this and put a face to
Publicly.
your opposition. And we talked to a number of religious institutions who declined to be a part of this conversation, at least in the public, Catholic Church, Mormons, et cetera. And then there are
Look
others.
what happened to Miss California. I mean, she stated her view and she was called the B word. And that's
Stated her view poorly.
the new face of intolerance.
No, I don't
Well,
agree
I mean,
with
I would
that.
make her. I
Miss-
would
Miss-
make her the
Miss
poster
Miss
child
California stated it poor. Whatever she stated, she
Look,
stated poorly.
People,
Look,
when I go back to Colgate, people will say, "Why are you defending bigotry?"
there
They will
is-
call me a bigot.
there is an evolution in
Do you think
all
I'm a bigot?
cultures in society. There is an evolution where sometimes we might have been comfortable at one time saying that all women could do is have babies and stay in the kitchen. And we're very comfortable saying that. And then all of a sudden, we start, there's politics around that. That changes. People are no longer comfortable doing that, as they shouldn't be.
But
they might have been comfortable saying some things around race that people are no longer comfortable about.
Do you
Well,
think
now
I'm a bigot?
if now we're evolving, and I'll answer that, if now we're evolving to a point that, yes, we should not be as comfortable comparing gay people to pedophiles, this, that, and the other, I don't necessarily see that as such a bad thing. I see that as evolution. Do I consider you a bigot? I don't know you well enough to consider you a bigot. I disagree with what you're saying.
So you're willing to say that
disagree very
people
strongly.
who defend traditional marriage are not necessarily bigoted because we can give reasons for them. It's not motivated by anything.
Yeah, what about that, Kim? Do you think, and then we'll have to wrap this, but the conversation here is about whether New York should pass the marriage equality law, and Kim is one who is hoping that New York does that, so is Vince. And the question is, and he used the term traditional marriage. And so how does that sound to you? And can you be in favor of that and not be bigoted towards those who want equality for same-sex couples?
Well, I think in this country you can think and believe whatever you want to believe.
And you're not, and that's what the beauty of this country is.
Yeah, I mean, but the country, the America that I live in, that I want to live in, and the New York that I want to live in, there are equal protections for different groups. Everybody's allowed to believe what they're going to believe, but when it comes down to action, when it comes down to discrimination, we don't really stand for that in this country.
Well, excuse me, we are opposed to unjust discrimination. To discriminate means to make distinctions. There are sometimes when it's perfectly reasonable to discriminate. When you discriminate between young people and what's appropriate for them and old people, what's appropriate for them. We still make distinctions between male and female in certain respects. I mean, men are required to sign up for the draft and women are not. Okay?
Well, I'm going to have to leave it right there. The debate will continue, but the fact is, this is America, and this is what we do. We have conversations, and there we have these conversations in reasoned ways. Thank you to Kim Dill from Sage Upstate New York. Thank you to Robert Kraynak from Colgate University. He's a professor at Colgate. And thank you to Vince Sgambati from Pride and Joy Families. And the debate will continue.